Hello, my friends, and welcome back to The Gently Used Human. Y'all, this is a really special episode. My dear friend, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, sat down with me for a deeply personal and incredibly insightful chat about all things healing, connection, and the ways we can show up for ourselves and each other. Sophie is a constant source of inspiration, not just through her work, but also through her approach to life. You can feel it in just being with her or in hearing her speak. Sophie is an advocate, a former media host, and the author of the latest book, Closer Together, Knowing Ourselves, Loving Each Other. In this conversation, Sophie and I explore some of the big lessons that come with navigating life's challenges, like how can we break free from our old patterns, regulate our emotions, and create space for authentic connection. One of the things that always strikes me most about Sophie is her ability to transform pain into purpose, something I'm constantly learning myself. Her perspective reminds me that even in the messiness, we're always capable of finding clarity and compassion. This episode is packed with wisdom and practical tools to help you rethink how you approach your own journey. So grab a cozy spot, open your heart, and let's discover what it means to live a little more gently and a lot more human. Sophie, welcome to the Gently Used Human. You are, how do I say this to people who don't know us? The love of my life.
But I'm not wearing my overalls, Scott.
I know, but you'll have to get into your power suit overalls for the next episode that we do together.
Right. So Scott keeps teasing me because I have this outfit that becomes my protocol because it's so freaking easy to get into when you've given birth 3 times and you don't want anything tied at the waist, okay? And it's super comfortable and it's super fashion at the same time, and it's jumpsuit that I love to wear, and I have it in like 3 different colors. But today, for all of you, I made a change.
I remember like comparing it to like Hillary Clinton's power suit. Was like, this is your Canadian tuxedo. Was the overall?
That's funny.
Do they actually call that?
No, that's funny because I have one made out of denim, and that's called a Canadian tuxedo. So yeah, kind of a Canadian tuxedo.
Nailed it. Sophie, I'm so excited to have you on. Like there are so many layers that I don't usually get to dive into with people, and the uniqueness of your life. We really get to dive into what is personal transformation. How does personal transformation turn into like advocacy work? And then what happens on a global political stage with transformation, which you have had a firsthand experience of like no one else I know.
I mean, I'm not the only one, but it's definitely unique. And because, you know, the co-political path that I shared with the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and the exposure that this meant, you know, whether it's in little details of your life or in the bigger details of policy, I've had a taste of what it means to be in public service as a family, and you know, have your life and details of your personal relationships be shared with the rest of the world. Yeah. Trust me, these are not first choices, but they are part of my path. Yeah. So I heard a poet not too long ago say something like, it's almost a comic relief if you truly look at how you do everything to not be where you are, right?
Yeah.
So we can fight, we can try to paddle through the water against the current, we can scream, we can just, you know, kick whatever it is that you do, or numb, or drink, or have too much sex or relationships. I don't know what it is, but we really try to not be where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when it's good, we're still like dreaming about the future.
Aren't we? I mean, I'm a lost romantic, so yes. Yes. The wind speaks to me, you know, humans speak to me. I have always had this love for life. I remember feeling and sensing it as a child. Yeah. So I guess, you know, as the years went by and I'm turning 50 in 2025, that love has only grown. And I've heard people say I haven't met a man I didn't like. Could be a woman, could be like however you identify. But in this case, it's hard to look at the world this way now. To think there hasn't been a human I haven't liked, right? Because we tend to criticize and have prejudice and form opinions in little blip of informations and images And all this short-lived crush instead of love leaves us empty.
Mm.
And I don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I being around you, I mean, you had the embodiment of that. And I remember reading in your book when you were talking about this, like this ability to feel like you were attuned to nature, attuned to the wind. And I was like, oh yeah, that you do carry with you this ethereal sense of like closeness and belonging that just, I don't know how, I don't really know very many people. Like I remember meeting you at a party and I just kind of hovered by you.
I remember. I was like, is he a freak or is he for real?
And I was like, I just want to kind of belong or get to know this person. And it happened out that then we became really close friends.
But I think it's contagious. I
Yeah.
think the way you carry yourself through life is contagious. The energy you emanate is contagious. Your love for life is contagious. Yeah. So I guess at some point people feel that there's no BS, when we kind of talk with each other. And I think that's what we're so thirsty for, authentic, real, deep connection. And I know that I can offer that. And today, at my age, I say it without feeling that I'm good or amazing. It's not that. I'm more in love with everything about life, and that includes the pain. And I never thought that I would say this, but it's true. I've lost my dad recently, so it's I know what that pain of grief is.
Yeah. How did you get to be in this place of like feeling that sense of like emanating closeness and love with people? Because like when you, in your book, when you described some of the hardships that led to a lot of the severe pains that then became your advocacy work, did any of those senses of like connection and love that emanates from you ever get challenged or thwarted?
Well, first of all, I think if you believe that you emanate love, you're pretty much doomed, right? You're doomed.
Shit.
You're disconnected. You're like, I'm so great. I have these angel wings. I'm enlightened. Yeah. That's crap. I don't believe that. I think that the more you bow to life, the more you put your head down and go to work and look at humans in the eye at the same time, that's where it happens. Yeah. My pain is not just my pain. From all the stories that I've shared, and I took a couple of risks in my life, as a young TV and radio host in Quebec about 20 years ago, I shared the fact that I suffered from an eating disorder. And then in those days, nobody talked about bulimia. I was like, what the heck? Like, what? Do you vomit after a meal? That's disgusting, right? That's all that people knew. Or you're anorexic, you don't eat, and it's a capricious way of the teenage spleen or stress, right? Angst. And that's not the case. What I've learned through my years of advocacy, and now it's more than 20, is that we're all one trauma away from each other. One. It takes one dramatic life event to completely switch your life around, your brain, and the way that you interact with yourself and other human beings. So my heartache, my body ache, my dis-ease, and my pain that I tried to numb through food, because eating disorders is like any other type of addiction, right? Yeah. Name it. And we all have these micro addictions. It doesn't have to be a full-blown addiction, but we all have them. Because remember, and this is, our dear friend, Dr. Gabor Mate, addiction is a behavior that you adopt that gives you temporary relief, and that in the long term kind of has negative consequences on your own life or the life of other people around you. So think right now about what your micro addiction could be. Is it too much TV? Is it too much phone? Is it dieting? Is it obsession with your physical appearance? Is it not wanting to age? Is it jumping from one relationship to another? Is it not being able to be alone? And by the way, I'm not perfect. Like, I felt everything I just said, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you're aware of it, like when I get angry and I have 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, when they just like poke and poke and poke, and then I'm feeling it rising, and I'm like, I'm going to lose it. Okay. Go in your closet, go to the bathroom where every mom has locked themselves in before. And do your breathing exercises for 5 minutes. I told my teenager the other day, I said, I'm going to lose it. I need to regulate. I need 5 minutes to regulate. Of course, they're like, ugh, what is that? And right? Of course,
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
mom. So I went. I came back, and I was much more ready to receive any type of aggression, or not aggression, aggressivity,
Yeah.
or a dividing force. I didn't feel as threatened by it. So
Yeah.
for 1 second, imagine, if you're listening right now, at every moment you've had in your life where you kind of lost patience or became aggressive or thought you were going to explode, if we took those 5 minutes to actually say, wait a second, I'm catching this happening inside of me. I'm going to pause and I'm going to repair it before I go in front of somebody else that I love, or somebody that's at work or whatever.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Gilbert said, and it really struck me, she said, if I don't do the work on myself, others are not safe to be in my presence.
Mm.
Ouch.
Ouch.
Ouchie. Ouch.
That's some radical responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've got many colleagues in the field who's actually, there's a book named that, Radical Responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that my pain, I was always as a child very, very sensitive to other people's pain. Like if I watched something like there was a rape scene in a movie, or somebody being violated, I could not sleep for weeks.
Yeah.
And I would be able to kind of put myself in their shoes, not thinking and sensing, what have they gone through, this invasion. And then I was like, I wanted justice for them. Not only in the law sense, but in the right to peace inside of you. Not to be torn apart constantly. And a lot of us feel torn apart because our plates are overflowing. We're tired. We're depleted. We're working hard. We're trying to give our kids or the people who surround us with so much that it's just too much. And at some point, when all systems have been tried, it's like, woof, shut down. Body can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think my pain has been a catalyst for connection, to get more intimate with, and this is not exclusively sexual, obviously, to get more intimate, closer, more real, I would say, with myself and with other people. And by the way, my mom and dad did give me a big piece of that.
I mean, as you're talking about like pain as this catalyst, like pain is a social glue. And it's interesting that it's pain is often actually more potent than love as something that brings us together. Because within pain is also like this endorphic release, this relief that also weaves us together, and we bond over shared challenge.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think nothing replaces love and compassion and curiosity. No. And with the work that you do somatically, when you share the pain, it's your opportunity to also release it.
Yes. Hopefully.
And then comes love. But love has to be the container. Without love, there's very rarely a release of pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a big difference between bonding and then continuing to form an identity around the bond of pain than it is to say, actually, we heal together.
I love that you bring this forward, because you just made me think that we can also get addicted to pain.
Oh,
because, and it's incredible, like people in abusive relationships, or people who are actually in there when there's aggression, and this doesn't mean that people want the pain. No. It means that when your brain learns this, it's its comfort home.
Yeah.
It doesn't know any different. Yeah. So when we judge others, why aren't you getting out of this situation? Why are you staying with him or her? No, we should not judge, because this addiction is real in the brain. That the brain seeks to flee danger, but to also seek comfort.
Yeah.
And if pain is that comfort zone, it's all we know, that's where we'll go.
Absolutely. And we will keep trying to find it to match that home base of our nervous system.
But isn't that sad?
Yeah.
Like, not one child comes into the world wired that way, unless you had a very traumatic in utero life. It could be. But still, we're made for love. We're made for connection. We're made for closeness. And then again, we search our whole lives for it.
And we're made for familiarity. I think you and I can attest to this in various relationships of like, I know that like I had such a clear moment in a relationship. After a relationship ended, I was like, oh my gosh, this was my dad. Like the same type of pattern of like, here's some love and then here's some violence. and the replication of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was chasing the approval from my dad, just like I was chasing the approval of this person I loved, who
Listen,
was, oh my gosh,
it,
what are
it
we
can't be
doing?
more real. It
It
can't be
cannot be
more
more
real.
real.
We
Yeah.
are, the active child inside of us is
Yeah.
always there. And
Yeah.
the past is the present, because
Yeah.
if you were always nervous or avoidant or anxious with a parent or a caregiver, you'll be that way mostly in a relationship. So
Yeah.
you talked about, the pain and the aggressivity. For me, it was more, well, let's connect, but then you're gone. So what am I supposed to do? So then in a relationship, if you're gone, am I abandoned? Am I rejected? And my nervous system just plays tricks on me.
Mm.
But if you're aware of this process and
Yeah.
may I be honest that I learned about this in the past, I don't know, decade?
Yeah.
Like more thoroughly.
Yeah.
And I noticed that unless you get out of this industry and the people that we talk to, but not many people know their attachment styles. Not many people know what emotional literacy is, or even best how to regulate your own nervous system. And this is the work that you've been doing so greatly. But I think that part of the health of our democracies actually sit on our capacity to know ourselves and to regulate ourselves.
Mm.
Even the political system.
Even the political system, as we weave back and forth between the individual process and the advocacy work, and then expanding out into the political sphere.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to the advocacy work before we go to the political sphere, because I think there's something really interesting about that. Like when you started speaking forward and essentially, I don't know if normalizing is the right word, but giving a face, a humanization to a severe pain, to a severe challenge, a trauma, a manifestation of trauma, like bulimia, like anorexia. What were you met with? Like, what was the response?
So the night before I announced this, I was in my bed thinking, okay, you need to know that I'm taking such a big risk that I could not have contracts after this, because I was not a well-established host yet. I was just starting. And I will tell you that there was a little bit of resistance, but nothing compared to the amount of love, and also people sharing, going, Soph, I've been suffering from this for years. Or I go to this event and this little girl comes up to me beside her father and says, my father doesn't know, but this is what I've been going through. And scarily enough, I think 1 out of 10 people that I meet on my path have an addiction, or know what somebody close to them suffered from an eating disorder, for example. And especially through the pandemic, as it just grew exponentially, it helped me, Scott. It helped me to connect more with others in a way that I was so thirsty for.
Yeah.
And I had a love-hate relationship with, kind of like celebrity media, fashion, beauty. Like I worked in all of that. Yeah. When you're a teenager, you're attracted to all that. Well, I was. And it didn't make me happy. My ego wanted it, but it didn't make me happy. Yeah. So I go back to my nature. I go back to my practices, whether it's meditation, yoga, being outdoors, cooking, reading, writing, anything that kind of like relaxes my nervous system. I go back to as many times as possible in a day. And if it's 5 minutes, it's enough. At least I did it,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's something controversial that might come up for people as we're talking about, and you sort of named eating disorder as an addiction. Now, most people think about it as a mental illness, and or contextualized mental illness based in a social pressure. To go back and talk about our dear friend Gabber, like when he says, "Don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain." And I really appreciate that not only did you do this advocacy work, but you also write about in your book, especially like going back and unraveling the pain that the addiction, the compulsion covered up or helped soothe.
I think we all, in our own ways, try to run away from pain and numb it, hide it. We try in every single way to not feel it too much. We're afraid of the pain. But there's a difference between pain, which is totally normal in life. That's what life comes with, human pain. Now, we're not talking about inflicting pain here. Okay. The difference between pain and trauma is that there's a constriction in the body and that there's something is kept closed.
Yeah.
And there's this famous quote from Rania Rilke that I love that says, I want to unfold. Let there be no space inside of me, hold itself closed, for where I am closed, I am false. So right now, if you're listening, if you have parts inside of yourself that you don't want to open up, it's okay. It's not a bad part. If you're ashamed of it, if you're guilty of it, if you're angry with it, if you're sad with it, it's okay. It's not a bad part. It's just the part of you that probably has to be there because it served as a protection mechanism.
Yeah. And
we hold on to that for so long and it hurts so bad. And when we hold on to it too tight, it forms a little ball somewhere inside, energetically or in muscles, tensions in your body. You don't need to hold on to it. You're worthy of untangling those knots. It's not your true nature. It is not. But it's part of life. And I think that when I started to share my story, I understood one thing. When do you want the pain? Now or later? But there's no other option. It's now or it's later.
Yeah. And later involves more accumulation of it.
That's it. I have chills. Yes, that's it. Because to make pain your companion, and again, we're talking about emotional pain, right? The distress of life, the relationships, the heartache and all this. We're not talking about, direct aggression or anything like that. But navigating pain is the gift because it allows you to make solitude your companion. And living in the life that we lead today, think about your life right now, or anybody listening, think about your life. Think about the amount of information that is bulldozed your way every day. The stress when you watch the news, you trying to, make ends meet, or struggling at work, or not knowing your sense of purpose and where you're really going into life, and what's going to happen with my marriage or my relationships. It's a lot. It's huge. And we keep pathologizing ourselves, but our bodies are just using their own mechanisms to respond to abnormal stressors.
Yeah.
Like our lives are not made for humans. We're not made to be sitting in front of the computer for 12 hours.
No.
We're not meant to look at something from so up close all the time. We're meant to be out there in the great outdoors, to have hope, to be in connection, to not be isolated. So there's a difference between that solitude, which is your pain, but there's almost like, I don't want to romanticize it and say poetry, but there is an essence of life and of aliveness to it. And then what happens is that if you don't have your right to that pain, you're getting hijacked by loneliness. And solitude is a human right in my book. It's your own hero's quest from the inside.
Yeah.
But it's hard in our culture. We keep being rewarded for self-betrayal. Don't age, don't look like this, don't act like that, don't have this belly, don't have that hair, make sure you elongate your nails and whiten your teeth and be performing and successful instead of contributing and sharing. So we're constantly being rewarded as we betray ourselves. And that is emotional immaturity. So imagine that in a whole societal level, whether it's politics or leadership or corporate culture. And it means that we're wasting a whole lot of wisdom to accumulate what we think will make us happy on the hedonistic treadmill, but it's not. And we see the results everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Sophie, as we enter into this domain, I want to circle back for just a moment and say, okay, so you're such a prime example of the question, what, don't ask the addiction, ask why the pain. But then, as you talk about, you can either deal with the pain now or you can deal with the accumulation of that same pain later. But how do we deal with the pain now? How do we actually enter into the material that's under the hood of all of these micro or macro addictions?
That's a great question. So the way that I used to deal with the pain was to eat too much and then feel so full and guilty and have to purge in order to get the release. So we do the same with alcohol, with sex, with TV, with gambling, whatever. But it comes back to knowing how to reset and calm yourself. Because every time we are purging or numbing or trying to choke our pain, we're getting further and further away from it and further away from a state of calm inside our body.
Yeah.
So when we live in a society where we think that rest is like, we're not even worthy of rest. Like depletion is actually the sign of, overachiever, made everything himself or herself or themselves. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. Nobody's a one-man show. I don't believe that at all. Every human being you meet on your path has a capacity to teach you a lesson, whether it's negative or positive. But I think that it comes back to the state of calm. When you talk to a little baby to soothe them, and we've all been little babies, you're not going, hey, little one, oh my God, you're so cute. Are you calm now? Do you want to go to bed? Right? Like, no, you slow down. Same thing with a lover. Yeah. Same thing with a best friend that you're trying to listen to and help or just be there for. We're rushing all the time. And love is slow. So if we're constantly not being present, and stress is a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment, then how can we love truly? Yeah. And that's true for ourselves too.
Yeah. Yeah, I can really resonate with that of like this ways of revving ourselves out of the possibility to restore our resources that give us the amount of energy and attention to kind of sit with and be with and feel through the things that have never gotten a chance to be felt and metabolized and healed.
Yeah, and it's not our fault. Like, I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I haven't done this work. I'm like, I'm not good at this, or I'll never get there. No, it's not true, because it's not your fault for where you are now, but you are fully responsible of where you can decide to go. Yeah. So it's never too late to start this work. This is the big lesson. It really isn't. I mean, we did say that you first start with a little pain and then the pain accumulates. And if we taught emotional literacy and nervous system regulation to young kids, they would absolutely develop in more, regulated adults. And so when you look at the state of the world right now and think of a political leader, your choice, you choose, think of a face that doesn't seem regulated. And I'm not going to name names right now, but think of facial expressions of discontent, of control, of frustration, of fear, instead of calm, reassuring, regulated, present. It changes everything for a parent, for a leader, for a teacher, for a political figure, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. It changes everything to be in the presence of people that have that regulation. It goes back to like that sense of like when I met you at the party and I was like, who this? How do we hang? And
you were just looking for a person to party with and you heard I was a Quebecer. So you came straight to me.
I was looking for someone with a Canadian tuxedo that I could go to Kiki with all the time.
For the record, I was wearing a dress that night. You don't remember.
I remember you were in a dress. I just but in my imagination, you're always wearing a Canadian tuxedo.
Fine. I can live with that.
I mean, projections. That's our next subject anyways.
Go for it.
How's that for a segue? I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout. Thank you for naming that process. And like I have been inspired by you in this way, because I think that as we get more well known, the tendency is to secure our image even more, as opposed to be that much more transparent. And I know that I struggled with this a lot as I started becoming more known as a psychologist. That I was like, how often do we get to say, I mean, I get to say on my podcast because it's called The Gently Used Human, but how often do we get to say, I'm still messy with this thing, or I'm still figuring this out, or holy shit, I've been in therapy for 30 years and teaching it for 20. And I didn't figure this out till, I don't know, last week, that I had this sense of worthlessness or this thing or that thing. And it's like, and so I just want to appreciate on the multiple stages to which you are present on. And I mean that like world leader stage, a television host stage, personal, individual and author stage. Like, you have been consistently transparent.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I
can,
right?
Yeah.
As much as I think where the healthy boundaries are as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that you say that you struggle. You're a psychologist and you struggle. I think that brings us even closer to you, where you know where to set those boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes things completely different. Now, I've met kings and queens and celebrities from all over Hollywood, name them whatever, okay? The one thing I learned as a lesson is the second you believe in your title, in your position, or in your aura, or in your whatever celebrity status, again, disconnection. It's been very dangerous, the system that we built, where we are in adoration of people who control a lot of our attention.
Yeah.
And a lot of where we spend our time and what we look at. And by the way, like, ask yourself this question, like, look at what you consume for real, like every day. Look at what you consume.
Yeah.
Does it make you happy? Does it make you feel nourished? Yes or no? And then ask yourself again, why am I watching or consuming it if it doesn't? And this is not to say, oh, everything is rosy, cozy, and I'm just going to get this because I feel good. No. Yeah. But does it come into contact with your true values? And do you know what your true values are?
Yeah.
I'm not going to compromise on that, because this coherence, this integrity that I've worked on, this doesn't come freely. It takes work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of, people will think, oh, well, you've had everything easy. Politics is about limousines and champagne, or you don't know what pain is. I mean, people, now that I've seen all sides of it, I finally understand the sacrifices that people make in their daily lives to serve their country, whether it's in uniform or not. Yeah. It is beyond what we can imagine. Yeah. And we lose respect for it because a couple of, rotten apples just ruin the whole picture for others. And that's very dangerous. Yeah. Because it means that we lose respect, we lose a perspective, and we lose trust in our institutions, in people, and in corporate leadership or in politicians, and with reason, because there's been many cases that would have us conclude easily that we've been, that we have a reason to mistrust. But our true nature wants to trust. And I want people to know that when they're with me, they can trust me. That's one thing that I want people to know. Yeah. But the only way they can do that is if I work through my SHIT. And like my dear friend singer Serena Ryder says, she says, if you don't deal with your SHIT, you're full of it. You become full of it.
Is that a lyric in one of her songs?
You know what? Maybe. She's bold enough. She's bold enough to do that. She's an amazing singer-songwriter, Serena Ryder. She actually made an album based on her own mental health issues. She's just unbelievable. But when she said that, I just felt it was so just down to earth, real. I meet many people on my path who have such different walks of life, like completely different. And one day I'll be in an event where there's like 1,000 people in a room and they're asking me for pictures and signing books, and it's all great. But then the other week, I'm with my little one at the supermarket with my bun on my head and my leggings, and he goes in to buy something because he wants to go on his own. And I'm sitting down on the, like outside of the supermarket, like on the cement, with my backpack, with his backpack actually, waiting for him to come out. And I see this little kid who's so cute, and I'm like a kid lover. So I'm like, hi, little one. And the parent's like, what the heck? Like, ew, like pulls them away from me. And in that instant, I'm like, Sophie, you are in everybody and everybody is part of you. There's like this, I don't know what I can call it, but this universal web that we're all a part,
Mm-hmm.
in and from. And I think we need to remind ourselves that every day. I think we live such narrow lives in silos that we forget how connected we are. And then we start believing in our, I have this little deal with God, or I have this little deal with my lover, or I have this little deal with my child, and I take on this role. There are no roles to take. There are relationships to nourish, including the one with yourself. And I think that's true for parenting as well, if there's parents that are listening.
Yeah. Oof, that was a strong statement for a t-shirt.
Boom!
You better put that on a t-shirt, Sophie. It's interesting in that sense of like, I mean, I know you've literally had dinner with queens and kings, and like there is something about the pedestaling that either happens naturally or as part of a system that is actually dehumanizing.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like we might adore them one moment and despise them the next, as you I know have experienced. And it's all a form of dehumanization, projection, dehumanization of going, this person in that web that you're referring to of interconnectivity has somehow transcended it, or is bigger than the rest, or deserves so much more because of a certain positionality.
Yeah, that's a big equation to try to solve. If I can just say that in my book, Closer Together, it's right behind me right there. I met with a dehumanization expert named David Livingstone Smith.
Brilliant guy.
So he's amazing. And he's done very difficult work of sitting down with people who have committed, atrocities. And he says, Sophie, hatred stems from a deep need for connection that never took place. This does not excuse any criminal acts or anything like that. Yes. But if you talk to people who do work with prisoners or people who have committed crimes, you find out, unless there's a really, really, and that exists too, like a really deep issue that is very difficult to solve in extreme cases, you will find a light. You will find the humanity, and you will find the pain that is universal, and that is, it keeps coming back up. So many psychologists who work with these people say it's the same type of pain, of abandonment, of rejection, of not belonging. And it's just, you internalize all that your parents and your environment made you live as a child. And then you form these adaptive behaviors to protect yourself. And then they stay with you until you really look at them and be like, wait a second, I don't need that voice that tells me that I'm not good enough all the time. Yeah. I don't need that voice that says, you're not perfect. You need to be perfect. Yeah. Or I don't need that voice, or, I think it's Gabor Mate who kept saying, you can say to your super ego, F you, I don't need you anymore. Or to be a little bit kinder and say, listen, I know you were there to protect me, but I don't need your help anymore. Yeah. And that I use often. Recently, that little voice that says, I'm afraid of the future. I don't know what's going to come. How am I going to navigate this? Yeah. The doubtful one. I don't want that voice. I don't need it. I want to be able to trust. So I do my exercises. I'll calm down, and I'll actually hold myself and tell me, it's going to be okay, baby love. It's going to be okay. Just trust. You got this. Yeah. But how do we really speak to ourselves this way when no one's looking? What is that inner conversation?
It's usually pretty violent. And I love that quote by David. I think it's David who also said, like, violence is when we don't know what to do with our suffering.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's another word for suffering is pain. And so when we don't know what to do with our pain, oftentimes we enact self-violence in the form of these critical voices and these belief systems that are so, like, things I would never say to another person, I've said to myself over and over again.
It's unbelievable how
It's
we treat
unbelievable.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in those little moments where we're alone, and it comes back to solitude again, to that right to be with ourselves without damaging ourselves, without judging ourselves, and without being violent towards ourselves. When you think of things like, I don't know, whether it's cutting or other measures that people take to release the pressure of the pain that is inside, it's also that. And then when we don't deal with it and we suffer in isolation, well, it can literally kill us.
Yeah, truly. And as we were talking about this aspect of dehumanization, it's like we can dehumanize these sort of figures, and I want to talk to you about ways that you've dealt with that. But we're also talking about a dehumanization of ourselves, or a replication of already the ways in which we don't feel whole or connected, which is in itself a form of dehumanization.
Yeah. I mean, I've danced many times in between this school of thoughts where, many philosophers for hundreds of years said, the nature of man is a brute force and aggressive and wanting to create chaos, right? And then others more recently have said, no, it is not our true nature. Our true nature seeks connection. It seeks closeness, and it seeks peace and even spiritual presence. This has nothing to do with religion. And if it does in your life, that's great as well. That fits in. But to have hope in the greatest angels of our nature is in our brain now. They discovered an area in the brain that has a spiritual capacity, right? And longing. I think when we lose that, we actually become sick. We become sick. And mental health, I don't know how many times I'll say this, but mental health is not just the absence of mental illness. It's the fabric of our lives. It's how we treat ourselves. It's what we eat. It's how we sleep, how we move our bodies, how we take care of ourselves, how we interact with other people. That's mental health. And I almost don't want to use the word mental health anymore, Scott, because it's narrow in itself.
Yeah.
Because you cannot talk about mental health now and brain health without talking about gut health.
Yeah.
Right? We know this now. It's completely, if you have inflammation in your gut, you'll have inflammation in your brain.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of our wild wholeness, and everything's connected. And the minute we forget that, we feel lost. There's a reason why more and more people feel that they don't have a sense of community or purpose, because we've fragmented all those natural gatherings where people needed each other and were nourished by each other because they actually saw each other eye to eye. And that's the other thing I learned from the dehumanization experts, is that face-to-face cannot be replaced.
No.
You can Zoom, you can try to write all the greatest diplomatic papers in the world. Face-to-face, even facing your opponent, is extremely important in kind of like letting some type of guard down as human beings. And, I think that ignoring a baby is almost a form of emotional torture. We know that exercise that's very well known in psychology, where the mom is completely ignoring and not looking into her baby's eyes, and the baby's starting to freak out because it needs connection. But we're the same as adults. We need it differently, but we need it as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all big babies, but mature ones, I hope.
I need some eye contact, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, please.
And a soother.
I mean, how do we bring down these walls besides eye contact? I remember a story you shared, and I won't go into too many details. I'll let you say it if you want to. But if someone basically either knowing or not knowing who you were, but making a comment, a pretty crude comment about your family, and based on the political nature of your family, and you trying to find ways to bring it back to, hey, I'm a human being in front of you. I mean, goodness knows we probably have been in relationship situations where we're also in the heat of the moment and defensiveness going, hey, can you come back to, I'm just another human being with you. But what are some of the skill sets? How do we bring people back into that human connection for the possibility of rewebbing or of coming more into our humanization?
Big question that you're asking.
I know. I like the big ones.
I know.
Questions. The big questions, Sophie.
I did not say anything.
Sophie, I can read you.
Anything. So let me take one example, and I'll tell you what happened in my own life. But when you pass by a homeless person, okay, on the street,
yeah.
Do you make eye contact? Do you talk to them? I'll often make eye contact or smile or leave them a little something that I have with me, whether it's money or food or whatever. Mm-hmm. But most of all, I'll just look into their eyes and with love.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you, like, it makes me emotional just to think about it, because it's not all they need, obviously, at all. They need much more than that to feel secure and safe in their own lives. But when I'm with my kids and we see somebody who doesn't have a roof or, a safe place to be, I keep telling them, like, don't feel that he's so different from us.
Yeah.
If there, was a tragic accident, it's not going to happen. But if there was something tragic that happened in your life and you lost it, that could be you.
Yeah.
So this is your brother or your sister. You decide how to interact with them.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I'm in the doctor's clinic. It's like 7:30 a.m. My daughter has to go for a blood test. We're like no makeup, super relaxed. Justin is prime minister at the time, obviously. And we're sitting down in the waiting room. And there's lots of patients waiting. So we're just waiting and waiting. And this man comes in. And I could see his facial expressions, how he was dressed, how he behaves himself with the staff there. His tone of voice, aggressive. He wasn't in an alert mode, right? He was not in his parasympathetic rest and digest, that I can tell you. And then I hear him say something like, "Yeah, I'm here for a test for the Trudeau cold." And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And I talk about this in my book, Closer Together, more detail.
To which he's referring to COVID.
To which he's referring to COVID.
So just so we're clear with everyone.
Yes. So in states of alertness, in states of anxiety, in states of unsafety, people will bring their attention to other people to blame or circumstances or situations instead of taking charge of their own emotional and bodily states in different ways. So, of course, when you're in politics, you become this, beacon that people look towards to, that is very easy to accuse of any wrongdoing. And by the way, when you're in politics, whether you do right or wrong, you're not going to please everybody, right? 50% of the people won't care and 50% of the people won't like it, kind of thing, So you don't do this for the fame. You don't do this to be known to the world. You do this to make the best out of the world. And you'll make mistakes. We're human beings. But I'm very concerned that if we don't discern between human beings who are more at peace with themselves, who have traveled the world, who love human beings, who are not afraid of other human beings because they are too fragile. And here's the thing. When I was writing the book, I was speaking to a psychologist who told me the most unhappy human beings I've ever met in my 40 years of practice are the ones who cannot trust in others. Mm-hmm. And the more fragile you are emotionally, which means you don't know how to control your emotions, you don't know how to regulate your own system, the more threatened you will be by others' difference. This is true in families and with brothers and sisters, and it's true on, the world platform.
Yeah.
And again, I have chills because I think the future of our evolution depends on this. How regulated will we be as we face the biggest crises that humanity has faced? That's a true question. Yeah. Environmental anxiety is real.
Yeah.
Economic anxiety is real. Yeah. There's unsafety pockets everywhere. And without emotional safety and physical safety, we go nowhere. It's all bets are off, right?
I'm marveling at this idea of like, and you and I are in cahoots of going, how do we do this on a mass global scale?
Yeah.
And I get the pleasure of exploring that question with you in our life together. And it's like I really hear you in the sense of like, if we don't have these fundamental skills given freely, available, that are our natural birthright, but have been often robbed from us because of trauma or other forms of urgency culture, other things, then what opportunity do we have to reclaim our resources, to rehumanize, to reconnect, to do repair work, to do all of this, if we don't have these fundamental skills of being able to regulate ourselves?
I am as deeply concerned as you are, but also, I mean, I think I'm an idealist realist. I don't want to put on the rosy glasses and think everything's going to solve itself by itself. That's not going to happen at all. And you see how people interact with each other. You see how they vote according to their level of safety.
Yeah.
And emotional regulation. This is real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
If you don't know how your body is reacting to life, you won't know why you act and react the way you do. So I don't know. I think there's a way to build on more resilient and closer communities. Mm-hmm. I think that people respond extremely well to warm, welcoming energy. I think we're super thirsty and hungry for it.
Yeah.
So we don't have a choice but to continue on this path. And our whole earth and Mother Nature is teaching us, if you don't, try to agree to disagree, at least that, right? Yeah. But because of the distance and the artificial intelligence, artificial relationships now, then we don't get the real regulation that we need. So although AI is bringing us a load of beautiful things, we also need to be very aware that if we're going to go and take an even rapid pace than the canter that we're in, I love horses, than the canter that we're in, we're going to get not only breathless, but when we lose that breath is the connection between who you are and your soul. It's like that thread. So without us resetting, then the whole wheel is off. And we won't be able to roll into the future as we are meant to be, because to be honest, maybe in our lives, Scott, we won't see the result of what we're trying to create. Yeah. That's okay, as long as it's there for people who come after me. Like, we're not doing this because, this is my legacy, right? Of course I want to leave something positive, but it's so much more than that. It's not about what's going to be written in history books. It's what's going to be left behind in our hearts, soul-wise, energy-wise, and also knowledge and education-wise. We're not going to do this without education. It's key, and unbiased education, not chosen and decided education,
Yeah. Do you think, and I know you and I are deep in this question, but I want to ask you in front of thousands of people.
Great. Go ahead.
It's like, you have seen firsthand behind the curtain of politics and advocacy and possible transformation on a mass scale. Is it possible? Like, with all the red tape and the bureaucracy, is it actually possible to do systemic change from your perspective?
No doubt about it, that it is possible to change ourselves.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Is it necessary for me to have the answer to your question in order to do what I do? No. I want it. I have chills again, like from my head to my toes. Do I want it? Yes. Is that what I thrive for? Yes. Do I want humanity to continue the way it does? Yes. Do I hold the answer? No. Yeah. But I will have tried with all my might to believe and to act and to love with all that I have, so that at least I will have done my part to make sure that that is possible. In the end, like when I take my last breath, I just want to ask myself, will I have loved enough? And I want to know that it was enough. Because other than that, I mean, yeah, you can go up to the moon and we can invent a new wheel, right? That doesn't touch the ground. I'm sure there's going to be incredible advances. Yeah. And technology is serving us well. But without the soul of it all, and not the contempt, the familiarity without the contempt, the closeness and the belief that we're actually capable of doing everything we want to do right now without having to possess the answer. Of course it's going to happen. We'll see.
I think this is one of the reasons I love you is so much is because there's heart without the over idealism or the unrealistic idealism of like, yes, there's like this gung-ho-ness that is actually quite exhausting.
It's so tiring.
It's so tiring, and it leads to more burnout, and it's hard because it's like there's so many of us in any political sphere that want change, that want something better for the world, and there's a way in which it is sustainable, and there's a way in which it is not.
So the one thing that I want to talk about here is that it's that sense of urgency.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it firsthand why this is necessary, and it is. Yeah. We need to react urgently to catastrophic circumstances in order to help the most vulnerable. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But to carry that sense of urgency nonstop inside of us, yeah, I don't think gets us there faster. It gets us there more stressed and more depleted, but faster, I'm not sure about. And this is coming from a woman who was called Tornado in her teenage years. I had so much energy, Scott, like I could do so many things in a day, and I still can. But now my body's saying, oh, wait a second. I don't think you're regulated the same way anymore. And I think you're worthy of actually resetting before you reach 9:30 p.m. and you're only starting to think about yourself because you had so many, other people's needs to respond to. Yeah. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Yeah. And now we know that autoimmune diseases, are more prevalent in women who put their needs last. Yeah. But look at our whole society is kind of set up that way. And plates are overflowing. And I don't like the word toxic patriarchy. And I mean, I'm very much aware of what it is. And there is a serious problem. But we taught that to our boys. They're worthy of more of that. I'm angry that they have to grow into this narrow pocket of what it means to be a man. And that's to their own detriment. And then we feel all the side effects of that as women. Yeah. But we've put the ego and the intellect on the pedestal for way, way, way too long. And we've been living in that left brain hemisphere at the detriment of our emotional, intuitive center. And to go back to what is possible, are we going to save this planet? Are we going to be able to counter the darker forces that want to deal with, the not so good angels of our nature? I think that it resides in our capacity to actually not be afraid of our own human emotions. And human emotions are not dangerous. Yeah. We just haven't been taught how to live them fully. And that's a full life. That's a real full life, to be able to live your emotions fully. Yeah.
And one of the main components of rehumanization. It's like, if we are dehumanized within ourselves, meaning we are cut off from ourselves, it is that much easier to dehumanize another, even if what we feel isn't aligned with what someone else feels.
I've never heard the word rehumanization. It's kind of, hey, wait, like we're not robots, like, but I know what you mean. It's kind of going back to our true nature. Yeah. Of seeking connection, of being, look, I think we're actually trying to reparent ourselves. Yeah. Look at leaders out there who are wreaking havoc and creating divisiveness and polarization and anger and fear. Don't tell me they're well regulated, and don't tell me that they're trying deeply to reparent themselves as the compassionate, curious, calm person.
Yeah, unlikely.
Yeah.
And I can imagine there's not a lot of space for it when you're put on a pedestal that's already, again, outside of this web of connection. And so like it's cyclical, or it's it's often until we are so separated from a pedestal, or like often why relationship breakups, as we know, are a catalyst for such deep change, is because we're outside of that either pedestaling or that deep destructiveness that often can come where we're not actually viewed as we're ourselves or connected and met.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous when you govern masses, right? Whether it's in a corporate entity or in a family or in a school or on a political level, because as we know, and this is interesting, when we hear the word co-regulation, it's not about two people making themselves feel calmer at the same time. No. It's one calm nervous system dealing with another person in distress and using their tools to be able to listen deeply and provide repair and relief and calm. Yeah. So this is the proof from a biological perspective, physiological perspective, that if you're leading masses, that if you don't do the work yourself, then you're actually not safe to be leading other people. Yeah. Because you're leading them into their fear mode instead of into their calm mode.
Preach. That was me leaning deep into the microphone to just say preach, because it is, I mean, I know that's part of what our exploration is like, how do we get this into the places that are not only necessary, but are so necessary because of the trickle-down effect.
You know what? It's going to be a weird insight here, but one of the main ways to do that is called play. And when an animal is sick, they stop playing. When a child is sick, they stop playing. When adults stop playing, we're not in the right zone. We're very playful nature as human beings and as growing adults, right? And when we lose that, and then again, look at, leaders around you that in your families or in the bigger spectrum of life. Do they look like playful creatures that ignite, I don't know, good mischief, not bad mischief, good mischief. Good mischief and smiling and playing and giggling and having this lightness of being, right? The unbearable lightness of being. Yeah. It's this way of living where you know that you are no longer a victim of your pain. Yeah. And this sense of weightlessness here and there you'll feel. Not always. Don't get me wrong. Like enlightenment is like, don't think about that. Just think about the weightlessness. Like sometimes when I'm hiking a mountain, I keep thinking as light as a feather, Sophie, even though I feel like a whale, right? Yeah. Because it's like 3 hours of hiking and I can't do it at the last minute. But light as a feather, meaning you don't have to carry it all. You can give some to others by sharing with words your pain instead of throwing it here and there. It can be done in a mature, calm way so that you actually find containers here and there that actually receive your pain and understand it and not judge you for it. Yeah. This is what we're trying to do.
More of those playmates, please.
Yes, please. We'll redefine playmate, Scott.
Oh.
Put me in the center foil. We'll play.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. You know what? I'm reclaiming playmate. Thank you for being my playmate, Sophie.
There we go.
Oh, this has been such a pleasure. It's always such a pleasure with you.
It has.
Sophie, do you have any upcoming events, and where can people find more of you to hang out with and be with and maybe just stand next to until they get to playmate with you?
Well, actually, so I have a website, sophiegregoiretrudeau.com, and you can find that same handle on Instagram and Facebook, and there's lots of new things coming. My book also, obviously, Closer Together, that you can order off Amazon. more to come as we might be a little bit mischievous together on December 12th.
That's true.
Doing my webinar live session with Dr. Scott Lyons.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that human.
Where we will be diving into, the science behind mindfulness practices and yoga and movement and having fun together. And we're going to do that together, actually live on December 12th. So join in. Can't wait.
It's going to be amazing. Sophie, thank you so much for your brilliance and your bravery. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Did you hear the kisses?
I heard the kisses. I took them all in.
But they're not just for you. They're for everybody listening too.
So those kisses are being spread around to each and every one of you, and to all our gently used humans out there. We love you.
Love you.
Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, and don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And show some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.